Greetings, mortals, and welcome back to the Library of Gnosis. I'm your host, Simon, and today I have a very special guest with me. My brother from another mother, a child of the sun, a master in his own right. Ian, introduce yourself.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Simon. I guess I would say first and foremost, I consider myself to be a magician. And I practice angelic theurgic magic on an almost daily basis. I have a pretty consistent practice. I'm also a Templar. We're obviously in the Templar Collegiate together. That's how we met. And yeah, he starts showing off the bling. I don't have that to rep, but I do have a seal from icon from the Inner Order actually behind me in that. Here,
awesome.
I'll grab it real quick. Yeah.
Show the audience.
Yeah.
Oh, that's dope as hell. What's the symbolism behind it?
It's a limited edition too, and if you notice, let's see, I got 3 of 33.
Oh.
Yeah, I got that from going to the Templar Collegiate Gathering right before the pandemic broke out, actually, in 2019 in Denver. And so, and then what I do professionally is I am a Vedic astrologer. So I've been doing Vedic astrology since started learning it in 2007, got pretty proficient at it by 2008, 2009. And then I launched my full business. I had been giving even sometimes paid readings for years, but I launched my actual business in 2020 in June. I quit my job. I had been a social worker for a long time, and I quit my job doing that and launched my business. And then I also do spiritual counseling and some channeling, and even I'm still in the early stages of how I want to do it, but I do a little bit of past life reading for people and teach angelic magic. And then what was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, of course, I have a YouTube show that I do, White Lotus of Light. And my website is whitelotusoflight.com, all one word. And you can find my YouTube channel by the same name. And I interview people about alternative history generally, esoteric stuff, even current events, basically kind of anything off the beaten path. It's somewhat similar, I suppose, in certain ways to your channel, brother, in that but I think you focus a little more on the esoteric perhaps than I do, and I have a little bit more history, although I haven't really explored your channel in depth. What I have seen, though, is fantastic. So
I'm humbled. Same. Yeah, you've had some amazing interviews.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
The latest one with Timothy Hogan, on point, man. Yeah, I was spreading the video around so a bunch of people. They were like, whoa. This is the shit.
Yeah, that was awesome. So, and Simon's talking about the Grand Master of our Templar Order, Timothy Hogan. He's world famous esotericist. He's just amazing, absolutely amazing, man. Just so humble and so learned. It's crazy. That combination's wild.
Yeah. How do you feel about the future coming forward now? Like we have pretty much, I think, disclosure in a couple of years, maybe somewhere between like 10 or 5 years or 1 year for that sake.
Are you talking about UFOs?
Yeah, like the Pentagon,
Yeah, it's interesting because there's 2 competing theories about that I really like. Both of them. I actually, my latest show, you maybe haven't seen it. I interviewed a gentleman who's actually pretty renowned in the UFO circles, especially the people who talk about the secret space program, which is to say that or clandestine space program. So it's not to be confused with Corey Good and the To the Stars Academy, which is just clearly a CIA disinfo operation, but actual people who are really trying to kind of pierce the veil on what's been going on with UFOs. And it seems like a big part of the secrecy around UFOs is that the vast majority of what we see, and this is my opinion as well, the vast majority of what we see when it's a legitimate UFO sighting, meaning it wasn't a balloon or it wasn't a aircraft or a regular aircraft like a jet, right? But it's actually something that has incredible capabilities, like extreme acceleration, being able to do right turns, go vertical instantaneously, which the G forces on that would just instantly kill any biological organism without some kind of physics that we're not aware of. But I'm of the opinion that about 95% of those legitimate sightings we see are actually humans in the technology. Despite what I just said, it's that they have access to a technology that allows for those kind of maneuvers without having the G forces impact the ship itself or the pilot inside of it. Although it's possible that they're remote controlled, I suppose. But I'm of the opinion that humans have hyper advanced technology. I don't like to use the word elites because most of these people are pretty far from elite, other than in terms of wealth and power. When it comes
the
to
Illuminati.
morality, yeah, they're pretty
it's such a joke. It's like when they have the cross, they turn it upside down, and they eye, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Tricky bastards, bro. It makes
absolutely.
It like divide and conquer kind of thing, because they're taking the guise of like Freemasonry, and then people start hating on Freemasonry because they got infiltrated.
Yeah. Totally. I totally agree. I mean, I'm not actually a Mason myself. I am a Templar. I'm probably one of the few people in the Templar order that men that are not a Mason themselves. But my father was a Mason. You too. How about that? Yeah. My father was a Mason. My grandfather was a Mason. My great-grandfather was a Mason. More than likely, Masonry goes back in my family very, very long time. I suspect but can't prove that I might be from a Templar bloodline because I'm Scottish. There's a decent chance that my family, considering my great-grandfather would have been born 1860, 70, somewhere in that range. Usually, in those days, the Masons were they still kind of do, but in those days, the only three ways you could get in is if you were grandfathered in, meaning your grandfather was a Mason, not your father, it had to be your grandfather, or you saved a Mason's life, and then you'd be offered, or you had to be basically pulled in, usually because you were like Beethoven or Mozart or some kind of like superlative genius of some sort who impressed the order, and then they wanted to pull you in. Rarely someone could ask and be allowed in, but that didn't happen super often, and usually you had to show extreme merit. And so based on that, I'm guessing that my family has been Masonic for a long time, maybe back to since the generation before my great-grandfather, I think, came over from Scotland. So I think there's a decent chance that I'm from the Templar origin of Masonry in Scotland. It seems likely just based on the how old it goes back in my family. But I don't actually know that. But I agree with you that people like to blame Masons, and this isn't to say there aren't Masons who are up to no good. I actually talked about that a little bit in the second half interview with Timothy Hogan, and because he's a Mason, he has to be careful. You're not supposed to criticize Masons in public if you're a Mason. That's literally a rule, and there's reasons for that. And so, he even agreed with that when I said that in the interview. He nodded. So he has to be careful about what he says that could be perceived as criticizing other Masons publicly. Now, in private, they have courts and systems and all the stuff. And if someone goes off the rails in their estimations, whatever that looks, then you can be kicked out. And that's bad news if you get kicked out. But I wanted to go back, if you don't mind, just to tie off that thing about the UFOs. I agree with you with that I think disclosure is coming. But the two theories are, one, that there's the Wernher von Braun, deathbed confession or whatever, where he talked to his secretary, Carol Rosen, and said they're going to fake an alien invasion. And he supposedly said this in the 70s before he died. And you can see Carol Rosen talk about this in a 2001 Disclosure Project video, actually. And she mentioned like how terrorism would be the Cold War to weaponize space, then terrorism to weaponize space, then the threat of asteroids striking the Earth or comets striking the Earth to weaponize space, and then the final card, according to Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist brought over, founder of NASA, was they would do a fake alien invasion. That's interesting because there's a book called The Report from Iron Mountain that says there's 3 ways that we could create a global government. Now, that book is probably fake in terms of it's not a legitimate document that was leaked, but it's also like, no, I don't want to use that example. It's also like one of those leaked documents that has truth to it, even though it's not sourced in the way they say. And they said there was 3 ways that they could create a global government. A global climate crisis, a pandemic, or a fake alien invasion. So imagine now that you have a bunch of technology that you've hidden from the public for 70 or 80 years of development, right? Which is what I talked about in that Walter Bosley interview. He traces back the development to Nazi era technology, anti-gravity stuff, and then stuff that was done in the US. And even before that, he has an antediluvian source for that technology, which I also agree with, talking about Atlantean or Empire of Rama, Vimana technology that was recovered, like schematics or information about it that could lead to the building of it.
Die Glocke.
Die Glocke, exactly. Yeah, we talk about Die Glocke in that. And he talks about how the Teutonic Knights and the Fourth Crusade are actually the link to Die Glocke. And that he's of the opinion that the Teutonic Knights in the sacking of, I guess it's Constantinople at the time, that they got schematics or information that then by the time of the 1800s, they were able to do rudimentary versions of the technology, which are the airship mysteries of the late 1800s in the US. But he actually has information on this guy named Charles Delshaw. And they talk about how in the 1840s, 50s in California, they were having this thing called arrows with the Sonora Arrow Club. It's worth watching that video if you want more about that. But regardless, there's anti-gravity technology, free energy technology that's currently hidden. And that there's probably multiple space programs, at least 2, and I think way more than that. There's a U.S. one that's based on captured Nazi technology / working with the Nazis brought over in Operation Paperclip. There's a Nazi International space program, and so you could see elements of that in that Ortog or whatever it was, that thing down in the Congo in the 60s and 70s. Where the Germans were doing a space program down there, although that was still more rocket based. And then I believe that probably the EU has one, or elements of the EU. I believe I wouldn't be surprised if Israel had one. China, I'm sure, has one. Russia might have one. India might even have one. I think lots of elites around the world. I also think there might be private ones. Like ultra wealthy people, the trillionaires, the Venetian black nobility, people like that. At a minimum, they probably control most of these programs, but they might also even have their own privately funded stuff. They're wealthy enough to do that. But so I believe for sure that we have what I call ultra tech, anti-gravity, free energy, whatever you want to call it, incredible maneuverability aircraft, or spacecraft, I guess. And the 2 things around disclosure are there's either this fake alien invasion, and they're going to use real tech to do part of the faked invasion. So like people will see a real flying saucer or whatever come down and like blow up buildings and really blow them up with like laser, plasma weapons, whatever. And then they'll use blue beam holograms to create the image of that. There's thousands of these things when maybe there's only 5 real ones, but the 5 real ones will be doing damage, and people will see what looks like a mothership and whatever in the sky. Huh?
Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, like something like that, but like, really terrifying Independence Day style. And then the other theory, which I think is very intriguing, which Walter Bosley is of this opinion, is some people know with current events that despite it looking like the ultimate flex, like the Davos set can't possibly be defeated, if you feel into it underneath, there's a certain whiff of desperation. Why? Why are they pushing everything up? Why are they pushing harder and harder when the harder they push, the more obvious it gets that they're doing this nasty shit that they're doing? And every day more people come to our site to see what's going on. Well, one answer is that potential answer is this theory that we ourselves are at least partially alien, that there's something very akin to us. I call it Homo sapien interstellar. You call it whatever you want. But there's something very akin to us, maybe close enough to us that it's like the difference between a horse and a donkey, and that we could like breed but have sterile children. They might even be close enough that we could have viable offspring, There's certain things that point to this, like in archaeology, the cone-headed or giants, blah blah blah, that are talked about. Stuff in ancient texts about the angels breeding with women, all this kind of stuff. That some people are saying that our cousins are coming back, and that the elites know they're coming back, and that the elites are desperate to get control of the planet to try and have a unified fight against those elites before they come back, or against these interstellar cousins before they come back. I think that's a very interesting theory, and I think it might have some merit. I don't know what to think. I do think that it's clear to me they're gearing up for disclosure of a very controlled sort. Because in the U.S., I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's happening in the U.S., but like we're having congressional hearings about this and shit now, which is wild. They're having do official reports here, and the military and the Pentagon's acknowledging it. And then they're also simultaneously trying to make conversations like this one illegal. They're trying to make it illegal for amateur UFOs, saying it's a national security threat, which is insane. Like, it's insane on the face of it. And yet they're literally trying to pass that stuff in the next National Defense Authorization Bill, which would go into effect, I guess, in 2023. So I think you're right, that disclosure, for whatever reason it is, whatever the motivation is, and I think those two are the best theories I've seen. A third one being that it's just some kind of non-human extraterrestrials are going to make their presence felt, whether the elites want it to happen or not, and they know that's coming and they want to get ahead of it. It's clear they want to get ahead of something, either a fake alien invasion or our cousins or a third kind of extraterrestrial, right? That's going to make itself known, and they want to get ahead of that and put their story and their imprint in place before one of those things, or maybe something I haven't thought of or heard of, comes to the fore. So sorry for the long response, but I think it's an incredible subject.
Do you want to know my worldview? How I look at the world?
Absolutely, please.
Like, you have these different gods, like Thoth, god of wisdom, and Ra, the sun god, Ares, the warrior, everything. And how I think... I think that there's like this, the monad, we call it, the one mind. I think all these different gods, they're like, if you look at the cover of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, like a prism, you get all the different colors, like Mars red and, etc. And I think their DNA is like the strongest DNA in the universe. They're literally like gods. I get like a bit pissed when people call them aliens, but because they're literally gods. And I'm beginning to think that these stories about like Troy, they found Troy, and the gods were there helping. And I mean, how do you just make that up? Like, it can't all be allegory if the city is actually there. And like the sons of God who mated with human women, what's up really? They are hiding from us. I talked to my friend Brian Pope, and he said that we wouldn't be able to handle them. They're like 6-dimensional. Like if in the story of Zeus and who the fuck was that guy? Yeah, whatever, some god. She asked, like, the human woman asked Zeus to show his true self. And when he showed his true self, she burnt up, like a pillar of salt, So I don't think...
Oh, she died?
Yeah, she died. Like instantly, like spontaneous combustion, mm-hmm. So, but I think we have like the Pleiadian cousins. They're like cousins of the Anunnaki, as far as I understand. And there's a lot of like a human-looking aliens. Like you probably wouldn't notice them. Like bigger eyes, maybe. Very beautiful. Often they're described as. So
you're talking about the tall Nordics? They're sometimes called.
Yeah, that's like the Pleiadians, right?
I think they're different from the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians also look like us. The tall Nordics, I think, are more... I mean, they look kind of like your people. They're tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, usually. Very beautiful, very ethereal features, very fine features, and usually quite large eyes. I guess the women in particular are like mesmerizing to human men. So yeah,
That
so
sounds
kind of
like
like
a
the best of what your country has to offer, but maybe even kick it up a notch or two. So, but
yeah.
very tall and thin as well. Like they like even the women are well over 6 feet, I guess, and like
Oh shit. That's almost a bit
very
scary.
thin. What?
That's almost a bit scary. Women who are over like 6 feet.
If I'm gonna get abducted by aliens, I want it to be female. No,
Tell me how.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yo, how do you keep from stress? Like when shit happens, there's always something happening in the fucking world. And I mean, just closing it off, it doesn't do it for me. I have a hard time relaxing sometimes just because of all these different energies we're going through, like the Schumann's resonance. Some days I can just feel like today is gonna be a heavy fucking day, you know. And I ask people, everybody's like, yeah, today was heavy. It's weird, you know. Something.
Yeah, in fact, there's people are feeling it really right now because in sidereal Vedic terms, we're getting very close to very close to less than 1 degree conjunction between Mars, Uranus, and Rahu, the north node of the moon, all in Aries, which is we're both Aries, so we know
Aries number one.
Yeah, you say that, brother, but like also keep in mind we're a little hot-headed. I'm sure you would agree. That's kind of what our sign's known for more than anything else. That sexual, competitive, hot-headed, violent, right? I try to keep that last one in check as much as possible, and just do the other three. But when those three go exactly conjunct on August 2nd, like. That we're in a window right now, basically until about August 10th, of where it's very likely that there's going to be some kind of global event. And if I had to put money on it, I'd say it's something to do with this, where we're like needlessly provoking the Chinese with sending Pelosi, our Speaker of the House, from Congress to Taiwan. And the Chinese have just said, we reserve the right to intercept her plane, and we'll consider it an act of invasion of our country, which is woo. And the U.S. is like, we're going to do it anyway. And like, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm no fan of Pelosi, but I'm also not hoping to see like, some kind of extreme violence break out or World War III. And there is some risk of that astrologically. And I'm certain that the people who are the actual decision makers know that, and that they're trying to cause some kind of conflict by pushing that particular meeting. And so how do I deal with that kind of stress? I have a child too, right? I have like a 13, almost 14-year-old boy. And so I definitely think about all this stuff all the time. And, I've done a lot to get prepared. So that way that on a physical sense, like, food and water and shelter, and live in a location that's not in a major city. Like I live kind of rural, and my son lives very rural. Well, his mother lives very rural. And so that's one of the things I did. I basically have taken care of all the stuff that I need to take care of on the physical level. I could do more, of course, but I feel pretty good and very prepared, generally speaking. So that gives me peace of mind. And then I try and work out every day.
That's awesome.
And I think that really makes a big difference. Yoga really helps me. And then my angelic magic practice is probably the single most helpful thing that I do, I would say, in terms of bringing my stress down. It's amazing how I can go into ritual and be super stressed out, and by the time I get done, I just like feel so good, even like slightly blissed out at the end of it. So
I like to do the Kabbalistic cross every day, and it really cleanses the energy in the room. I can feel like it like raising the vibration of it. I love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about what kind of relationship do you have to the gods? Like, I told you my story, like when I was on like a death pyre and I floated through like a river and like some halls, and I saw statues of the gods. And what's interesting about that is people used to leave food for the statues because they thought it was like the communion with the deity. That the statue was actually the deity.
So what's my connection to the gods? Well, we might need to I see that the meeting's about to end. We can do a new one. And I can start it because I have a Zoom account. To answer your question, I think I can answer that in that 2 minutes time. I have a number of spirits or gods that are like my patrons. I won't mention all of them. Some I keep private, but Ganesha, Shiva, actually, interestingly enough, even though I would feel like I would more prefer Brahman or Vishnu, right? Like they kind of resonate more with my personality, generally speaking. But for whatever reason, it's Shiva that comes to me, and they say that the three are one, and so you shouldn't make any distinction between Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. So it's that same three-form God, right? That same Holy Trinity. Sure. But for whatever reason, it's Shiva is the name that comes to me, which is interesting to me. So Shiva, Ganesha, Lord Thoth is one of my patrons. Archangel Michael is one of my patrons. He's not a deity, but I'm very close. It's actually my middle name is Michael. So, and I have a close relationship with all of those gods. There's also the archangelic form of Samael is one of my patrons. So I have a number of different gods or angels that I have a very close relationship with. And Samael is really interesting because Samael is has a dual aspect. Most people, when they think of Samael, think of the Qliphothic or Goetic dark demonic version, which does exist, and that is part of that being. But there's also the archangelic form, and that archangelic form is actually rising right now. But I have zero interest in interacting with the jinn, because 95% of the time you're going to be interacting with the red jinn, and you want to talk about tricky and duplicitous. The jinn are probably the most famous beings of all for being tricky. And I think the thing is I always am shocked that people want to work with these darker spirits. In fact, I have a friend, my ex was super into the left-hand path, and I think she might have even used magic on me. I don't know. She was super into the left-hand path, and I, thought I had married her. It turned out she was already married, praise be to God. And so since she had committed bigamy, our marriage was null and void. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for that fact. But being with her, I learned a lot about the left-hand path and sort of darker magic and so forth. I didn't partake, but I would watch some of the stuff that she did. And I also got to know a lot of people who are in that sort of left-hand path community. Some of them are really, actually, weirdly honorable, wonderful people. And one of them, who I had tremendous respect for, I didn't agree with his path at all, but I kind of looked at it the way that there's that sect of Hindus that they do everything that's considered blasphemous to sort of break through to oneness through the other direction, rather than trying to get more harmonious. They're trying to just sort of obliterate within themselves all that darkness and like whatever by like indulging in it to the maximum. And I think that is a legitimate path. I don't agree with it personally, ethically, morally. It doesn't resonate with me at all. But I do think that it is a method, a much more dangerous, risky method to get in touch with sort of the non-dual ultimate reality. It's sort of like you're going so far in that direction, you just break through. And so there's someone I know who I'm friends with, and he has been doing dark magic left-hand path for forever. And he recently approached me, and he had a revelation. I guess angels and archangels came to him and said, listen, getting back to our topic about world events, huge events are about to unfold, and we're giving you a final chance to redeem yourself and look at what you've wrought. And they showed him a vision of like all that his dark magic has done in the world, all that has happened because of him teaching other people to do black magic and work with the Qliphothic spirits and so forth, and sort of everything that he had done and the karmic repercussions of that. And they gave him a chance to forsake that and redeem himself. And he actually wants to come to my show and talk about that. And I'm going to talk to them a little bit first and get kind of more of a feel of the lay of the land, but I'm probably going to have him on. And so I just think that that's interesting that he, the angels are telling me, for what it's worth, that the proverbial shit's going to hit the fan probably starting in the late September, early October area, at least in the United States. And my guess is if it's happening in the United States, that shit's about to get real worldwide would be my guess. So, I tell everyone, get your physical situation taken care of. And then almost more important than that is to get your internal situation, your internal house or temple in order, because, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
World War II. So at the opening scene of that, yeah, the opening scene of that's amazing, right? It's D-Day, and like all the boats are going up and the soldiers are shaking because they're about to go up on it. And by the way, like, what a bunch of pussies the current generation of people are. Men and women both, like, what the fuck? People are like, oh my God, I'm in a cell phone blackout, so my day is ruined. Meanwhile, these motherfuckers had to pop out of these boats and go uphill versus entrenched machine gun fire. You know what I mean? Like, my God. But so they open the boat and just everybody is immediately obliterated by machine gun fire. You know, just everybody dies. And then a little bit later in that scene, there's a guy and a sniper bullet goes pa-tang right off his helmet. And his friend goes, holy shit, you're the luckiest motherfucker ever. And the guy like takes his helmet off and he's like looking at it, and then bam, he gets yeeted right in the face by that same sniper because he is dumb enough to take his helmet off. The point is that if you watch that scene, one thing becomes really, really clear. In a moment to where like chaos is ruling completely, where like the spirit and energy of chaos is ruling, literally the only thing that matters is your karmic destiny and your ability to move within the flow state to find your way through a situation like that. And the best way to prepare yourself, it might just be your time, but the best way to prepare yourself is to be able to get into a place where you can be in that flow state without being reactionary to what's happening around you. Because if you start freaking out or you start getting really angry or, you know, off your rocker in some way, you're going to die in a situation like that, almost guaranteed. Go ahead.
I love the scene. I don't know what to start with. Like, you can't outthink the Matrix. It's perfect. If you read the Bible, it was said that Lucifer was made perfect. That's why you have the Mortonists who figured out that you have the way of the heart. You feel it. It's kind of like cheating in a way. You can cheat time. You know, I think your future selves in parallel realities, they're sending back information to you. And that's why you're drawn to like, oh, this. And then you suddenly, you're looking at somebody, I'm like, oh, I gotta go talk to this guy. And everything is like, it's like a big puzzle that just...
Huh.
Like that. I love this. Is it from Private Ryan where they have like two Polish soldiers? They're like Nazis, but they were like forced conscription, you know. And the guy just shoots them, and they're saying like, "Oh, please, we're Polish. Don't shoot us." And he just mows them down. I think that's from Private Ryan as well.
I don't remember. I haven't seen that movie in like whatever 20-something years,
yeah.
So I haven't seen it. I saw it once after the theaters, but I didn't watch the whole thing. Then I just kind of watched the opening scene a little bit extra. So I don't remember. That sounds maybe like it's right that one of the American soldiers just ends up killing those guys and doesn't care that they're conscripted Poles. I mean, that's just exactly it.
He didn't know. He doesn't understand Polish. So they were trying to like, he thought they were Nazis and shot them, you know. The horrors of war.
It's really true, and the thing is that I mean, I feel like we're in war right now.
Fifth generational warfare.
Yeah, and it's a spiritual war first and foremost, but of course, what happens up there trickles down to the physical reality. What happens in the astral, archetypal dream world comes down here. And the good news is, I'm utterly convinced that the good guys, so to speak, wins. That doesn't mean that only good people will survive. That's certainly not true. And it doesn't also mean that nobody's going to get hurt between now and then. It just means that from a variety of sources, both my own personal gnosis, what the angels have told me, certain planetary things, the Kali Yuga coming to an end in 2025, according to the researcher, that the Indian scholar that I believe is correct. And I explored this topic to the nth degree for like a decade before I found this guy's research, and I'm convinced he's correct. It's on Graham Hancock's website, actually.
I love Graham Hancock. He's such an idol.
Too. Really, yeah, he is. Do you know he was part of our order at one point? I don't know if he still is, but he was literally listed in our order when I first joined, and then now he's not listed in there.
What?
Yeah, he's friends with Timothy Hogan. In fact, his book, Magicians of the Gods, couldn't have happened, the whole section about Lebanon, without Timothy Hogan's help, actually.
Oh, shit. I know
Yeah.
Brian is acquaintance with Randall Carson, and he's great friends with Hancock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Timothy Hogan's friends with Graham Hancock, personal friends. But anyways, yeah, so the Kali Yuga is ending in 2025, but that doesn't mean that like instantly things will be better. Certain things will be instantly better. First and foremost, I'm of the opinion, and this is just my personal frame, and not everyone's going to agree, and I don't give a shit. I'm just going to share my, but just because like I get a lot of pushback on this, people want to complain whether they're left hand or right hand path. They don't like it. I don't give a fuck. Like, this is just my frame. My belief is that since we went into the descending Kali Yuga, which is about, I don't know, 5,800 years ago or something like that. I don't know the exact figure, but close to 6,000 years ago, because they're each 2,700 years with 300-year crossover period. So about 5,700 years ago-ish, we went into the descending Kali Yuga. And ever since then, Moloch has been ruling the planet. Moloch is the lowest sphere of the Qliphothic reverse tree of life, the tree of death. And it's the lowest sphere. It's the Thamiel or whatever, Thamiel maybe. I don't study the Qliphoth like at all, really. I'm familiar with it just enough to have knowledge of it. I don't even like looking at it, to be honest, just the energy coming off of it. I mean, it's very real. But, and it's just one frame or conception for this. So it's not like the end all be all, but it works for me. I am of the personal opinion that the god Moloch has been ruling for the past approximately 6,000 years. And what I've been told is that during the Iron Ages, Moloch always rules. During the Bronze and Silver Ages, Lucifer rules, whether it's descending or ascending. And during the Golden Age, the Most High, which is the true God that the angels serve, which is not Yahweh and is not Jehovah. That's a usurper God that tried to take that portfolio. That is not the Most High. The name of the Most High has been lost. It's simply, it's too high vibration to exist in the low vibration density of the Kali Yugas.
That's what we have.
It will be brought back forward soon. What?
That's why we have Hermes, the closest planet to the sun. He delivers the messages of the sun. So we should count ourselves lucky. We have Mercury. He helps us understand like the whole scheme of things. Have you listened to? Have you read the Hermetica?
Yeah, I've read some of it. I actually just bought like a better copy, and I'm going to launch into it. I've been in the middle of like intensive research about the Venetian Black Nobility. That's one of the main things that I'm studying right now, and just reading everything I can about Venetian history and stuff. Because the Venetian Black Nobility, in my estimation, are Molochian. They trace back to Tyre in Lebanon. I have a whole series I'm doing on that. Actually, people are telling me I should write a book on it. I might. I just have a lot more research to do. And so I'm in the middle of like reading a lot of stuff about that, and also about our progenitors, like the early Templar order, and how they related to the Venetian Black Nobility. But I haven't read the Hermetica in full. I mean, I'm familiar with all the Hermetic laws, but I haven't read the Hermetica in full. Cosimo Medici, we all owe you a great deal. And that's actually what I think you see, a split between the elites, the Luciferians, who are Hermetic, and the Molochians. And the Luciferians are the best way to describe them is they're the ones who brought around the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. Now, Luciferians are by no means wonderful, friendly. Well, wonderful is, I guess, up to interpretation. They're not friendly. They're perfectly ruthless and will do whatever. The big difference between the Molochian energy is it's very slave and total control, and would rather stymie all growth in order to have slavery and control than to have even a whisper of freedom. Whereas the Luciferian force, and also very materializing and polarizing, whereas the Luciferian force that's pushing against that, right, and that's who will rule the next 2 ages, is much more about liberty and freedom of expression. It'll still have certain elements of top-down control, that kind of thing. It won't be like total, like blissful freedom and unity and golden age. That's the golden ages. Those are the Sat Yugas that are that way.
Did you know it was?
And silver age. Go ahead.
It was Saturn who ruled the golden age. Did you know that?
Yeah, the high aspect of Saturn. I mean, like one of the things that's come to me through Gnosis, and this will blow people's mind, is if you imagine a bar magnet, right? And one end is one polarity and the other end is the other polarity, but it's one magnet. What's come to me through Gnosis is Moloch is the most high. So that would then imply that since Moloch is the lower energy of Saturn, that the most high is the higher energy of Saturn.
Do you know what that is? Because you have two cubes. Remember, you have the black cube of Saturn, but he's the god of time, says Saturn. But you also have the cube of Metatron, which squares the circle by having the flower of life. So you have two gods of time. And I don't think Saturn is the strongest. I think Hermes is the strongest god of time. So actually, the Hermes is the god in disguise. You know, like Odin used to like disguise himself as a wanderer and walk amongst the people, you know. That's the kind of thing I think Hermes does a lot. Doesn't it say in the Emerald Tablets, like, 10 times 100 I have descended into the halls of Amenti and up again. So he's been, like, everywhere you see his imprints, like Jesus, the Lamb, the Good Shepherd. Then you have Hermes Trismegistus, who was also said by some to be like a Christian prophet. And then you have characters like Simon Magus, I also think has a relationship to Hermes. A lot of people who are just like, because you have an oversoul that connects to all your different, and they can happen at the same time too. You can be living like reincarnations. You can meet yourself, you know. I guess we always do that. We meet ourselves in a different way. But I mean more on a, I don't know, more of a more specific instead of some vague idea of we're all one, you know.
Right.
What do you think about my theory about Hermes being Jesus, or like, because you have the three wise men that came, like Orion, to Jesus' birth. You have three pyramids, and in the Emerald Tablets it says that that Thoth built the Great Pyramid. And I also heard in the shafts, I can't really have like different shafts. If you put that, I heard it from David Wilcock, that loony bastard. I like him, but it's a bit strange. Anyways, that if you take the slope angle of that and like flatten it down, it goes through Jerusalem. Might be a coincidence, but you know.
Goes through Jerusalem, is that what you said?
Yeah, it goes through like the angle. If you make it like.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no question. Like, actually, I haven't uploaded yet, but I just did an interview with Peter Champu, who's like probably, I think it's probably safe to say, the premier geomancer in the United States. He's like a 32nd degree Freemason and one of the good, very honorable Masons like Timothy Hogan that I have. That's one of the things I get so tired of this. Like, I just had someone come at me the other day about it. All Masons are evil, blah, blah, blah. They're all pedos, blah, blah. And it's like, no. It's just fucking false. It's just not true.
Propaganda.
Some of the very best men I know are Masons. However, I do know other Masons personally, not talking about political figures, but I do know some other Masons personally who have a unquenchable thirst for power that I find greatly disturbing, or another one who's a Mason who is extremely dishonorable, and I'll leave it at that. And both of those people I find to not actually exemplify what I believe are Masonic codes. I mean, this is my personal opinion. I'm not obviously speaking any names. I'm not a Mason, so I can speak freely about this sort of stuff. I certainly won't reveal who these people are. But they're people that I know personally who are Masons who are not good. In my personal opinion, of course, I shouldn't judge, blah, 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 but their actions do speak to me of people who are, to use a Masonic term, not on the level. They just don't seem
profane.
They just seem like they're much more interested in temporal power and the benefits of wealth or fame or political power or whatever. But then there's other Masons I know that are unbelievably humble, super spiritual, good people. They just make the greatest, like they just make the world a better place every day that they draw breath. They're just wonderful people. And so I just think all this stuff, whenever I hear people want to demonize an entire group, I'm just like, even the Venetian black nobility, I guarantee, has members that are more reasonable. And that's one of the most corrupted groups I can imagine. You know, that's who, in my research, shows me actually runs the world. So anyways, I had this Peter Shampoo guy on, and he is a geomancer, and he showed all these ley lines that come out of the Great Pyramid. And I'm pretty sure one of them goes right through Jerusalem. I mean, there's no doubt that the Temple Mount is a critical geomantic point on the earth. It's not on the same level as the Giza Plateau, which is incomparable. Maybe there's an element in the Tibetan Plateau that exceeds the Great Pyramid. I don't know. But as far as what happens in the physical world, I don't think there's any point on earth that's more important than the Great Pyramid. I already thought that. I already had seen personal gnosis and vision showing me that long ago, almost 20 years ago now, way before I got into anything like the level of knowledge I have now. And he shows in that video, which I'm going to be uploading next week or so, about how all these ley lines that come out of the Great Pyramid cause huge kind of negative problems, really, because in his opinion, the Great Pyramid's original purpose, and I agree with this, has been usurped, which of course it has. We're in the Kali Yuga. I mean, that's just it. It's like, we have to come to grips with the fact we're in the Kali Yuga. It's coming to an end. Things won't instantly get better, except for Moloch will no longer be able to like directly communicate with his minions and touch the earth in the same way he can right now, or she can, or they can, whatever. Moloch won't be able to touch the earth to the same degree it does currently, and certain things are going to disappear fairly quickly from when that change occurs. I was initiated, a big part of my early spiritual journey was I had a Siberian shaman, like literally he was half Siberian. I forget what the name of his people was there, like way in the eastern part of Russia, right along the coast there. And then I think it was his father was Siberian and his mother was Inuit, like Eskimo, and he himself was an albino. He was like 6'3", 6'4", huge burly man. He looked like frickin' Gandalf. And I met him at a rainbow gathering, and this guy was like off the chain, like just an amazing human being. And one of the things he like emphatically hammered home was, if you're someone who's working, I don't like this fucking term light worker. It's just new age bullshit. You know what I mean? But if you're on the side of moving towards this golden age, more harmonious
old age prophet
with each other, yeah. If you're on the side of moving the culture forward, right, like moving civilization forward to a more harmonious state, more harmonious with nature, more harmonious with each other, getting rid of slavery, he said the single most destructive thing on earth, without exception, is pedophilia, and that it came out of the temples in the Near East. And I'll take it a step further and say Molochian temples, and that it is what opened the gateway to the really darkest of the dark energies. And in fact, I even had a piece of gnosis that at the beginning of the Kali Yuga, that there were dark magicians who were told by demons that there was an even more powerful force that they could tap into, Moloch, but that in order to tap into that, they had to start the ritualized pedophilia thing, and that then opened gateways to this ultra lower astral energy. And so this shaman who initiated me said the number one duty of, I guess, right-hand path is a fair enough distinction to call it, is that we have to end that on the planet. And I believe that will be ended within the next century. Actually, that'll be pretty much gone. Yeah. And I think it will be in part because the Luciferians, it seems, don't care for that. Sacrifice is a little different, but they don't care for the pedophilia. They don't like it. And that when they take over, one of the things that I can't help but smile a little bit about, even though, you know, like I'm more in the angelic current, is that Luciferians, they don't fucking play. They do not mess around. And so when they turn the corner on the Molochians, which is imminent, the next 3 years, when they turn the corner on the Molochians, they're not just going to throw them under the bus, they're going to end them. And they know exactly who all those people are. And so that's going to be one of their first orders of business, is to clean that rot out. And it's critical for Lucifer solidifying his, 6,000-ish year reign on the planet, is he has to completely suppress and throw back into the pit Moloch. And not because he wants to help everyone be harmonious and loving and angelic and be like the Most High, but because in order to secure his power. It's sort of like you take over for the old regime, you have to get rid of all the people who are in intelligence and the military or whatever of the old regime in order to solidify your power. So from a more pragmatic point of view. And so go ahead.
It's a very interesting topic. Like, reminds me of all the Q stuff, It was a psyop, but there was some legit information in it. So I don't know what's up,
So I have a friend and someone I've had on my show a couple times named Grant Eagles. He's this Australian guy. And he talks very coded. And he's kind of like a little bit difficult to understand at times because he has to be intentionally careful what he says. He's a Mason, and he claims to have a back channel into like super high levels of Masonry and like banking and so forth. And I got stuff from the angels in late November, early September that said that we would start seeing, at least temporarily, the pandemic thing wind down.
Yeah.
In the very near future, and also that Russia would go to war in Ukraine imminently within the next couple of months. And so I was like, okay, well, no offense to the angels, but I'll believe all this when I see it, because at the time, like, the pandemic thing was in full swing and it seemed like it would never go away. Yeah. And Grant came on my show in early December and he said, I've been told that they're going to wind up the pandemic thing in the next 2 months, and also that Russia will invade Ukraine and start a war in the next 2 months. And of course, the Ukraine thing's been volatile since like 2014, whatever, since the Maidan Putsch. But it looked like it was anyone's guess when that was going to happen. But he called both of those things, and both of them happened. And he even gave like a date, like he said by like before the end of February. And sure enough, it happened. And he's made a bunch of other calls that have been like dead on. And he described something akin to what I'm saying happening behind the scenes, a fight between the elites. And then I've seen also people from a Christian paradigm. And, like, I have a lot of respect for Yeshua, right? For Jesus. I have a lot of respect for him. And I want to get back to your Hermes comment here in a minute. But I saw Christians saying, oh, look out, because when the Satanism is defeated, then Lucifer will rush in, and that'll be the false light, and don't get pulled into that. And I'm like, God damn, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, for Christ's sakes. I don't know if you know that saying, but like, you don't have to have something perfect before you can realize that you should support this because it's defeating this greater evil. There's an existential threat. And this Great Reset is the greatest existential threat humanity has faced since at least the fall of Atlantis. It's probably been a complete cycle of the great years since we faced anything like what we're currently facing with the Great Reset. I mean, they want nothing short of cradle to grave, total enslavement of humanity forever, and which is the very much the Molochian point of view.
A boot stamping on your face forever.
Yep. Yeah, Orwell's warning, really. Yeah, no, that's well put. I actually was thinking the same thing when I
I can see... I've been having visions of the future. I don't know if I'm manifesting them or not, because you started talking about Private Ryan, and before I had like this vision of me talking about the Polish guys being shot, and I've been beginning to have a lot of visions of the future. I don't know if it's manifestation or not, but anyways, do you know who sits at the bottom of the Tree of Life?
You have Malkuth?
Yeah. I don't know how you count it, but Hermes is the bottom of the Tree of Life. And you have Sandalphon, who is also Hermes. It's just another name for Hermes. He squares the circle, And if Saturn were the most powerful cube, he'd be the one at the bottom of the Tree of Life. But he's not. It's Hermes.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had I wasn't able to record it partially because he didn't have Zoom and like he didn't I don't know, he said some stuff in there about karma that I was just like, dude, that's way too over the top what you're saying. Like it was too extreme. I just couldn't like run with it. And plus the quality is really low. So I never put that up, and like I don't think he'll give me an interview now, unfortunately. And he's very old school, and like he was doing it on a flip phone, and I had to put a flip phone up to a microphone. It's ridiculous. But this guy is like crazy, like, whoa. And he said that Malkuth represents this period of time that we're in right now, and that some people are going to be moving downwards. It's that whole bifurcation of timelines theory. Some people are going to be moving all the way down through the tree of death until they reach Thaumiel or whatever, the lowest point where Moloch rules, and that those people then become gray aliens, right? Total synthetic, genderless, sexless. What does that sound like, right? Genderless, sexless, can't even reproduce by cloning anymore because they're so incredibly artificial that they have to like take regular humans and steal our sperm and ovum, right? It's the whole anal probe thing they talk about. Did you know that when they get a bull, usually when they get semen from it, the fastest way is they put something up the bull's rectum and then force it to ejaculate. It's just the fastest, and they don't give a shit about the bull. And so then that's how they get the sperm. So I was like, oh, that sounds like what all the males describe. And females always describe getting their stomachs cut open, their abdomens cut open when they're abducted by these same beings. And I think they're harvesting ovum and sperm for this. But anyways, he said that some people are moving that direction and other people are moving up towards the top. And he said that until you break the wheel of samsara, you just move in this infinity symbol through those spheres. But we're at a period of time where it's splitting. This is always a period of time of splitting. And so people who've already experienced most recently the dark journey are kind of hip to the dark journey and are like, we've seen that shit before. We don't want anything to do with that. Those people are the ones who are moving up, and all the sheep NPC people are like moving on down.
What's your view on the afterlife?
On the what?
On the afterlife.
On the afterlife?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a super broad question. I don't know. I mean, it's the great mystery, right? I mean, it's the ultimate mystery, really.
I love the imaging of the Elysian fields from Greek mythology. Sounds so awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention that. When my grandfather was dying, I was talking to him, and all of a sudden he kind of zoned out, and he was on his deathbed, And then I was like, and he closed his eyes, and then I was like, oh, Grandpa, are you still there? Because I for a second, I thought maybe he had died.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he turned to me and he goes, oh, Ian, I just had the most wonderful dream. I dreamt that I was this little boy and I could see so well, and I can't see very good nowadays. And I was running through a field and it was sunlit and I was filled with joy and it was so beautiful. And in that moment, I felt really strongly that he was starting to leave his body and that he was either seeing his future reincarnation or some, afterlife kind of thing. And when my father died, I could feel and see him to some degree sitting there in the room. And he was so happy because he had been in such physical suffering for so long that he was just so relieved. And he was like, oh, it's so beautiful. There's nothing to worry about. It's pure beauty. Like, don't worry, Ian, don't worry about dying at all. That's this beautiful thing. So I certainly don't believe that, like, when we die, that's just it. It's a black screen, right? It's nothing. No. It's void.
That's impossible.
I don't believe that at all. I believe in reincarnation for sure. And what my personal belief is that we probably go through some period of time where we're in whatever the Elysian fields, or if you've led a darker life, you may have to review and to some degree experience what you've done to others, which could be akin to hell. That you have a hellish experience because you inflicted tremendous suffering on others. And in order to shock your soul to try to get you back on the path of like spiritual development, that you have to some degree experience what you inflicted on others. I mean, this is just my personal belief. I was raised Catholic. And so, I mean, I for sure have some of that Christian programming in my head that I guess I can't completely uproot. I do feel there is something like, maybe not punishment, but like a life review that's probably very painful if you've been a actively horrible person.
That's exactly.
Likewise, go ahead.
That's like, I know you don't like Bashar that much, but what you're talking about is exactly what he's telling. But you know what I'm scared about? Because they're taking our DNA. They're actually taking our Anunnaki DNA, because it's the most powerful DNA in the universe, and they're trying to make like hybrids. But I really don't want them to alter our bodies to look more like Greys. That's some VEF shit, you know? Because we were made in the image of the Elohim, but it's satanic that they're trying to change us to look other like Greys. Like, who wants to look like a fucking newborn? A Grey newborn. It's like a dead infant, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
that's a great way to describe it. I mean, if you look at this system, it's very infantilizing, right? It's very much like pushing people towards being children or babies and being completely dependent on some hive mind kind of thing. So I think that's well said. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, where was I? But Bashar has taught me a lot. I think he's doing it for good. Like, for instance, the law of neutrality. Like, it doesn't, the circumstances do not matter. Everything is about how you react to them.
Yeah.
Yep. So he's helped a lot. He's helped a lot of people. Bashar, I love the guy, Daryl. I feel such a light and like joyful vibe, because when I think about the all of creation, I see it as like the board games of the gods. Like Troy, they come in and like help do this and that. Because did you know why they had to intersect? It was because the Troy was about to fall too quickly because of Achilles. So the gods had to intervene because the fates had decreed a certain date for it to crumble. But I'm always questioning why they never appear here on Earth. Why don't do they appear, people? Like, I've heard people who said they like communicate with the gods, like they make like rituals and they come down like in some kind of form. Obviously not the original form, because we'd die probably. Our brains would explode. But like lesser like characters of. Have you heard about that? Anybody summoning? Because you can summon demons and some other stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely communed with some of these gods, and I think it's like some kind of projection of their true form. I don't know about like, I think because we're in the Kali Yuga, it's too dense for certain kinds of interactions that we once used to have.
Oh, that's a good point.
You know, I think we used to interact with like the Fae and elementals and little people.
It's like a fairy tale.
Yeah. I think we used to I mean, I think that a lot of the things that we think aren't real are just myth, are quite real. Let me give an example. In Germany, in Berlin, they have the Ishtar Gate, the actual physical Ishtar Gate. They brought brick by brick from Iraq, you know, which is, you know, at the site of Babylon. They brought it to Berlin, Germany in the 1800s, and they rebuilt it there. And I've seen it, the actual physical Ishtar Gate. And on the wall of the Ishtar Gate, they have lions and bears and ostriches and elephants, but they also have a dragon and a unicorn. And every single other animal on that mural is real. Just those two are mythological. And I don't know whether there were physical animals, like maybe the Siberian rhino was still existed for some period of time or something like that, or whether there was something that had survived from the dinosaur age. You know, like I just saw this kind of lizard they have in Asia, some kind of sailback, something or other. It looks just like a dinosaur. It's wild. And it looked a lot like a dragon as well. I don't know if it was like surviving remnants of like Ice Age animals that were like the last of them and then they wiped them out. Or another theory is that unicorns and dragons are extra dimensional beings, and that at the time when the Ishtar Gate was made was at the very beginning of the Kali Yuga, and people probably still had living memory of interacting with those beings because the veil is thinner when we're in the Bronze and Silver ages,
3 a.m.
And especially the Gold Age,
3 a.m. the witching hour. That's where the veil is the thinnest.
Yeah, and I think that there's a great grand cycles as well. Like there's the daily cycle where 3 a.m. it's the thinnest, and I think there's grand cycles that have to do with the
Halloween.
Yuga that we're in. And we're in the Yuga of extreme materialism and extreme duality and chaos and slavery and violence. And it's a period of time. I mean, we learn a tremendous amount when we're in this Yuga, our souls do, but they're very painful, dark lessons. And part of that lesson is feeling disconnected from source and having a very thick veil, and magic generally takes longer to manifest unless it's demonic magic. That's why there's a million, billion, trillion books on demonic magic and very, very few on, there is on angels and archangels, but there's basically nothing on the principalities, the virtues, powers, dominions, Ophanum, cherubim, and seraphim. There's very little literature on that. And that's because we're at the furthest point from where they're more able to move freely in our world. And right now, demons are much more freely able to move within our world. And so demonic magic manifests very quickly. Plus, it's just the nature of demonic magic that it manifests more quickly. And they don't veto what you ask if you do it correctly, and it's within the realm of that, or portfolio of that demon's power. You will get it. You might not like the result. You might not like the cost. Yeah, right. But you might, but you're going to get it. Whereas angels will say, no, if we gave you that, it would cause you lots of problems and that would be disharmonious for your life. We're not doing that. Angels will veto and they'll treat you a little bit like a child, which we are compared to these beings in my estimation. Whereas demons treat you like an adult. Huh?
He said he was a child walking through a field of reeds or whatever. Do you think that like you reincarnate to grow up? Maybe he reincarnated as a boy because that's where he was, like, mentally in his progression. Do you think? Oh,
talking about my grandfather.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he was just, I think that the Hindus
it wasn't meant as an insult. I was just speculating.
Oh, no, I didn't think you were insulting him at all. No. I think, the Hindus say that we incarnate in stages and then we excarnate in stages. Meaning our soul starts to, leave the body or whatever after 40, I guess. Or that you're moving closer to death at that point. It's kind of arbitrary, the numbers, and it depends on the person, their lifespan. But you incarnate first. The first bit comes in fairly early in the womb, 3 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And then more comes in, and then a major portion comes in with your first breath, and that sets your astrological chart. Mm-hmm. And that sets your astrological chart, but then you keep incarnating more and more, and then you're not fully incarnated until either 5 or 7 or 8 or something like that, and then your soul's all the way in your body, all elements of it. The soul isn't like mature, it's not like an adult, but the soul structure has fully incarnated into the body. And so I can't help but wonder if, because time is something that we just experience in the way we do, but I actually believe that everything happens all at once and that we just simply don't experience it all because of just the way our perception works. But so like right now, as we're having this conversation, the Roman Empire is in full swing. Attila the Hun is in full swing. World War II is happening right now. All that kind of, like, everything happens simultaneously. It just depends. Like the Mayans conceived of it as a great plate, and you had to find where you were on that plate. And that's what their calendar does, actually. It's for your soul to orient itself to the time it exists within, so it can understand like what to do within that period on the plate. Or another way of imagining is, imagine the Great Wall of China, or something much, much bigger than that and much, much taller than that, that has a gigantic mural on it that is all of human history. And maybe it's 1,000,000 miles long and it's 1 mile high. And as you walk along it, you can only see portions of it in front of you based on where you are next to that wall.
Trippy.
But the mural's all there. It's already done. You just can't experience it all at once. It's too vast. So that's, I mean, it's a metaphor, but
what's your
so I think he might have been seeing his next incarnation. What's that?
What's your view on destiny versus free will? It's just a very tricky subject, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, like the short answer is that both exist simultaneously, according to the mystics. That both, everything is free will and predestination. It's the free will of the one. Yeah,
everything
and but also everything's predestined because it's also the will of the one, right? So that's the short answer, which is very paradoxical, and we can't really wrap our mind around it. You know, that on one level it's free will, and the next level it's total predestination. It's total, you know, and it doesn't, our mind can't wrap around it. My personal belief, in a way that I can conceive of it in my mind that works, is, again, as a Vedic astrologer, when I look at someone's chart, I look for the 3 kinds of karmas. Now, there's the karma to where you have basically total free will. Like, that's represented by, for example, a retrograde planet means you have tremendous free will around the houses that planet rules, the qualities of those houses, and also the qualities that planet or graha or Caesar, which is what it means. Planet is graha, which means Caesar, to seize. And the Hindus say that when Mars, for example, Aries, or it's called Kuja in Vedic, right? In Sanskrit, it's Kuja. When Kuja grabs you, Mars, you might become really fiery. You might become really passionate and just have amazing sex with a woman, right? Really aggressive, really embodied sex. Or you might be at a bar and beat the shit out of some guy, or decide to fight him when you shouldn't, or say something stupid that'll lead to a fight, or be really competitive in sports, or whatever kind of thing, right? All Aries stuff, just passion, that passion of Mars. And then Jupiter might seize you, right? Yeah. Guru is what they call it. Guru might seize you, and then suddenly you're very benevolent and you're very growth oriented. Maybe you're indulging and eating a lot of food, and you're being very generous and helping lift up all around you and being really spiritually inspiring, you know. Or Mercury or Buddha might grab you, and then you're very eloquentious, you speak really well, and you are able to like have good learning or make really savvy business decisions, or, you know, all the elements of Mercury. And so when you look at your chart, if there's a retrograde planet, or there's just like like, let me give you an example. Let's say your fourth lord planet is not particularly strong. There's no aspects on the 4th house. It's not also really weak. You know, it's not really damaged, but it's also not like really exalted. And there's no other planet's aspect in the 4th lord, and there's no other planet's aspect in the 4th house, and the 4th lord itself is retrograde. Then that would mean that around things like vehicles, home, mother, real estate, higher education, things along those lines, which are 4th house indications, you would have total free will. It's very rare. You normally don't see that. What you tend to see is like some kind of weak indication for most things, but then you get always to someone's chart. There's always things to where you'll have like 2 or more indications. Like you'll have a very strong 4th lord, and it's well aspected. Like the 4th house is like, has a nice aspect from say Jupiter, right? Which is a benefic and is positive. Well, then I would say, okay, there's 2 indications. Now, whether you like it or not, it's almost impossible for you not to have a good relationship with your mother, a nice car, a decent house, a decent education. So you can, if you're lazy and you're shitty to your mom, that can be weakened. So there is some free will in there, but you're going to experience that. Conversely, like if you had a really afflicted 4th house, right? And you had like, if the 4th lord has fallen and then it has a bad aspect to it, from like Saturn or Mars, or has one of the nodes in it, say, then I would say, even if you work really hard, you're going to have shitty cars, you're going to have a crappy apartment, you're going to have a bad relationship with your mother, and you'll probably like wash out of higher education. But You can minimize that so you can have a decent relationship with your mom, but still not that great. You can have a decent apartment if you work really hard. Especially if you do spiritual remedies, it's like it says in your chart, you're going to get hit by a stone. And if you don't do anything, it's the Indiana Jones boulder. But if you do really hard work, then someone hits you with a rock and it whacks you on the head and you have a big goose egg on your head. So there's free will still. However, if you start having 3 or 4 indications in your chart that whatever it is, whether it's super positive or super negative, doesn't matter, that's going to happen. And nothing short of the gods intervening can overcome that. And my experience is that deities almost never interfere with that degree of karma. It's almost never. And it's usually because there's an even greater karma at the deity level or planetary level that is occurring. And that's another thing, is like there's planetary karma. And so let me give an example of that. In 2008, there was the big crash, right? And a ton of people lost money. But if you have a really good financial chart, you would have lost less money and been able to keep a lot of it. Some people even have reversal fortune yogas. I have some of those, where a Viparita Raj Yoga, where if something negative happens to society at large, you flourish. These are like the people who short sold in that market, right? And they made a ton of money when everybody else went down. But you always have to look at the context of the planetary karma, because planetary karma can trump your personal karma. It can beat your personal karma, and you'll be wealthy during the Great Depression, meaning that you have food and you're okay and you have a house, but it's not like you're a millionaire. You're just like getting by. But everyone else around you is like starving in the streets and on the street corner looking for work and whatever. And you're eking out a decent existence. So that's because your chart is good, but there's the planetary karma, which overwhelms everything. And the reason I say that is we're in a time of extreme planetary karma. We're in a time of where all the karmas that we have built up during the Kali Yuga with all of our relative incarnations, they're all coming to a head right now. All the soul contracts and so forth are getting finished, and the new ones are being created, and we're setting the stage for the next age right now. And so because of that, there's major world events underway, and that does trump your own personal chart. But if you look at your chart, you can get a sense karmically of how well are you going to do. And then there's one other element that I've discovered in terms of charts and how to sort of hack your chart. And that is that the 6th, 8th, and 12th houses are considered very negative houses in Vedic astrology. And for example, the 8th house is like death, hidden enemies, loss, right? But it's also the occult, esoteric, secret societies, tarot, Reiki, astrology, sexuality, kundalini, tarot, if I didn't already say it, runes, magic, right? And so I have a really stocked 8th house in both my natal chart and my Navamsa, or second half of life chart, post 40. And what I learned is that if I leaned into those positive indications of the 8th house, such as like I became a Knights Templar, I am now an astrologer full time, I'm a magician with a near daily practice, I now experience the 8th house consciously as these positive things. Instead of when I was unconscious, bad things would happen to me. I would lose a friend, would commit suicide in high school. That happened to me. Or I'd get in really bad car wrecks and break my back. That happened to me. All kinds of different negative things would happen to me because it was subconscious. And it's that Jungian thing of you experience it as fate. I don't agree with him that it's quite that simple of if you're conscious of it, then now it's fine. If you're unconscious of it, then it rules your life. I don't think that's really true, although I do think you can transcend your chart if you become enlightened to where you just completely leave it behind, good and bad both. But that's exceedingly rare. For the average person, you kind of experience it in those 3 kind of ways of how much free will you have. Either a lot, a little, or almost none, depending on what it is your soul needs to learn in this life.
Yeah, I think
Oh, go ahead.
The Gnostics used to say they wanted to break free of the influence of the planets. They saw them as the archons, I guess because there's a duality and each planet has a good and a bad. But the Gnostic, that's why I call myself a hermeticist. Because when people hear the word gnosis or Gnostics, they think of these pessimists, like, oh, we're fucking trapped and everything, and it's horrible. And it's like, yeah, you're making it that way by thinking so. You're literally like manifesting that, like cube, Saturn. That's why you should focus more on light work than staring into the abyss, you know? Not to focus too much on the abyss, because, you know, like Alex Jones, he goes crazy with all this conspiracy, constantly, you know, you gotta ground yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely manifesting.
I did that back in the day. I went way down, you know, my spiritual awakening in the, did you want to talk about that? I can just tell them. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So when I was a little kid, I had lots of like psychic phenomenon, like saw ghosts. I had like I've never been able to replicate this, but I had a telekinetic, or it could have been a spirit responded to me thing happen when I was I was visiting my, we were down visiting my great grandfather in Texas. He was turning 100.
Yeah.
So I guess I was about 10, something like that. And we're in this graveyard, and there was these big pickle jars that were big. And I was super skinny when I was a little boy. I was super skinny and not very strong. But there was these huge pickle jars, and I couldn't even really pick these things up, but that people had been putting roses in or flowers at the graves and water. And then it was all filled with, like, at this point, like swamp water, basically, because they were dead flowers in or whatever. And I had this overwhelming desire to throw one of these giant pickle jars. I mean, they're not that big, but they were that big to me when I was this little kid, right? This overwhelming desire to throw one against a tree. And all of a sudden, reality got kind of weird for a second. And one of these pickle jars went boom and slammed up against the tree and broke. And I don't know whether it was like a poltergeist or whether maybe I somehow did it and blacked out, because I realized, like, my dad was old school. He was born in Montana in the 40s. And like, this would result in me getting my ass beat. Like when my great grandfather's crying at his wife's grave and I'm a little ways away and I fucking break something on a gravestone, like, you know, that's at a grave, you know, on a tree, like that's begging to get my ass beat by my father. And it's just something I feel like I wouldn't have done. I mean, the mundane explanation here is that I was a little kid and I was mischievous and threw this against the tree and broke it because of this desire I had. And then I just blacked it out because of my intense fear that my father kicked my ass. I don't think that's what happened, though. I don't know whether it was like a poltergeist or whether I had a moment of telekinesis, because I used to have dreams about telekinesis all the time, but it scared the shit out of me. And my father came over and I said, I don't know what happened. I just saw it smash against a tree. I think someone threw it at me or something. And like, a series of weird things happened, and my dad did not kick my ass, which in and of itself was a magical occurrence. That he didn't,
miracle,
you know, just freaking whack me, or at least, you know, slap me to the ground or something, because he had no fear of doing that. He was born in Montana in the 40s.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. You know? Sorry about that. It's a lot of trauma hitting kid.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing that happened to me, but yeah, like my dad was definitely old school in that regard. But anyway, so I also like saw ghosts when I was a kid, and
I've seen a ghost.
I would regularly. Yeah.
Full body apparition.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's what I saw too when I was a kid in my house. But I had like lots of mystical experiences when I was a kid, and then the hormones hit. And so for like the next decade and change, literally all I could think about was the ladies. Like, I don't know how I graduated high school. It was all I could think about was sex. Like, I still have a super strong sex drive, but back then it was like crazy off the chain.
I don't think I'm going to be able to monetize this video.
Well, sorry, man. Yeah,
I keep going.
Have to do serious surgery on the video to make it monetizable. Anyways, yeah. So it was all I could think about, and then when I was in college in like 1999, so gosh, I would have been about 23, I guess, when I came out of this. And I took a Religions of India class, and we read the Bhagavad Gita. And I got to the part to where, Arjuna is telling Krishna, I can't kill my cousins, like I can't do it. And Krishna says, yes, but what would you be killing? That is, it's just their body. And he says, what they truly are is the Atma. Fire cannot burn it. Sword cannot cut it. Wind cannot wither it. And water cannot drown it. For the Atman is eternal, immortal, and changeless. And when I read that passage, I literally heard a bell go off in my head, like in my body. My whole body reverberated reading that. And I had been I was watching Beavis and Butthead not long before that, for Christ's sakes, and really being into it. And I don't even know how I was so dumb for a decade, but I just was. It's the hormones, I guess. But I just was really, I don't want to be ashamed of myself back then, but other than playing Dungeons and Dragons and some cool reading fantasy books, man, I'm embarrassed about who I was from 13 to 23. But I read this passage and something vibrated in me. And then at the end of that semester, which was now early 2001, so I guess that's 24. So it was early 2001 at the end of that semester. So I read Bhagavad Gita late 2000, January 2001. It was the final day of that term. And I, like many college students, I wasn't getting any sleep. I was cramming. I was trying desperately to get everything done. I stayed up for almost 2 days straight. I didn't eat anything for 2 days straight. So I had sleep deprivation. I'd gotten some sleep, but I hadn't eaten anything was the big thing. And the minute I got done with finals, all I wanted to do was go smoke some weed. That was the first thing I wanted to do before even eating. We had this thing called a Soapy Bomb, which was taking those Soapy glass bottles. Yeah. And they used to have this little paper mark where the machine came off where it was really thin. So you could take a nail and crack that open. And it acted kind of like a gravity bomb, basically. And so it'd make a really powerful hit is the point. And I took 2 of those back to back, and I was trying to play Mario Kart on the regular Super Nintendo. And I was just running into the wall over and over, just the same wall, not multiple walls, the same wall. I couldn't even drive it. And they were just hitting me with turtle shells and laughing at me. And I was I can't play this. I'll just watch you guys play. And then I was trying to watch them play and I couldn't even do it. I was I got to go lay down. And I went in the other room and I laid down and I closed my eyes. And suddenly this man appeared before me floating in full lotus position, this Buddhist monk with the orange silk robe and stuff. And he said, I have something to show you. And I was mind you, I was basically a muggle at the time. I'm what the fuck is happening right now? But I also was super intrigued because nothing like this had ever happened. I had smoked plenty of weed before that, but nothing like this had ever happened. And so all of a sudden I see this black, everything turns black, and I hear this clackety clack, 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 this horrible, unsettling clack, clack, clack noise. And the blackness that I'm seeing I start zooming out and I realize it's scarab beetles, the flesh-eating scarab beetle kinds, the scavenger kinds. And they're just crawling over the top of each other. And that's just making that horrible noise. And it zooms out further and I see this skull and crossbones made of these scarab beetles over the entire continent of Africa. And I interpreted that to mean that Africa was under some kind of or I should say, I now interpret that to mean Africa was under some kind of dark magic spell that's in part colonialism and all the horrible stuff that's happened in Africa related to that. Then I saw U.S. politicians and I saw them talking and I saw their skin stretching and claws trying to push out and demons moving all through them. And they were just completely infested with astral parasites and demonic possession. And they were talking war, war, war. We're going to war. We're going to war. And just really warlike. And I was what the fuck is going on? Mind you, January 2001. Then the next thing I see is a map of the United States basically from a satellite's point of view. And right where New York is, imagine the way when you drop a rock into a pond, you see the ripples spread out. I saw an impact like that right where New York is. Swear to God. And I see this huge impact where the map bends in and ripples. And then I saw this blackness spread out from that and just sweep across the country and also swept across the ocean the other direction until it hit the west coast of the United States. Now, mind you, I lived on the west coast of the United States and it was just a vision for me this particular part of the vision feels a little weird to me, but this line of light suddenly rose up and shone really brightly, and it stopped the wall of this darkness. And that did kind of happen to some degree a few months later, that the West Coast was who tried to resist the Bush 9/11 march to war. It was pretty much just the West Coast of the United States that resisted. And so this light flashed up and it stopped. And then the blackness got like much thicker and viscous like oil. And within it, there was these nasty things like deep sea fish, you know, like those lantern angler fish in the deep sea ocean. And like all sorts of like aquatic nasty creatures like crocodiles and just aggressive, various different aggressive predatory creatures. And it rose up, and now it was like raising up off the ground, which it didn't do the first time. This wave came across, but this was like a bit of a wave was coming up, and then it crashed against the West Coast of the United States. And again, there was this pulse of light, even brighter this time, that stopped it. And then those same creatures started attacking each other. Those things in the viscous black liquid, they started attacking each other. And all of a sudden the black liquid went up, and it got so high that it reached up out of like the planet's atmosphere, and it slammed against the West Coast of the United States again. And then this gigantic shining light came up that went way beyond the height of that wave, and the wave hit it, and then it just shook, and then it disintegrated, and it turned into light. And this voice said, "And the light of humanity shall once more spread across the world." And like this light then spread and went all the way around the planet. And there was more to the vision that got into like my first like past life thing. And I won't go into that, but I was like, the vision then ended not too long after I got a little more personal instruction. I was like, what the fuck was that? Because I'd never, ever experienced anything like that. And so I then go about my life, and I go to Europe in that spring, and like, you know, like thinking about how Bush stole the election, not really thinking much about that vision I had, other than something in that vision was then confirmed to me, which was like really wild, like the tale. And I started having these dreams about being a Viking afterwards. And then like he had a name, and his name meant exactly what it was in the vision. And I'll tell you that off camera at some point. I don't want to share that particular thing. But that was confirmed for me that name was real and made sense in like old German. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck? And, but again, still kind of muggly, not really thinking about stuff. Started meeting people who would talk about Atlantis, and started meeting lots more people in the esoteric. I thought that was weird, that suddenly that was coming into my life a ton. And again, I still like was like, whatever. And then 9/11 happened.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh my God. Like it took me that day. I actually figured it out from a practical point of view that it wasn't, you know, inside job. Because there was no air defense around the Pentagon, which makes no fucking sense, of course, right? I even said to my friends, I was like, what's the first thing you do in Warcraft 2, which is a fantasy game we played? And in that, if you don't build arrow towers, and the other guy quickly accelerates his buildings to get Griffin Riders or dragons, and you don't have arrow towers, they'll just wipe you out. In other words, air defense is one of the first things you have to build in that game. And I was like, hey guys, and I said that to my friends, I was like, right? And they were like, well, obviously you have to build arrow towers for air defense, duh. And I said, how come there aren't pop-up surface-to-air missile silos all around the Pentagon? And how come no jets scrambled? And they were like, and then they go, no. That would
cognitive dissonance.
What?
Cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. They were like, that would mean the government was involved. And I was like, yes, but you didn't answer my question. And they're like, nope, that's the answer. And I'm like, that's not an answer. Yes, that is the logical conclusion, but why was there no, you know what I mean? And they were like not wanting to talk about it, got angry, really angry at me. And I was like, okay, guys, whatever.
Have you heard the story? Have you heard the story of Estonia? Have you heard the story about Estonia, the ship? It was traveling from Sweden to, I don't know the final location, Estonia maybe, and it sank for some reason, and the government was quick to like pour. Oh,
the Lusitania, that ship.
Estonia is called. not lucid. It's here in like it goes from Sweden to like Estonia and like.
Okay, so it's a different ship. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. They were really quickly covering it up with pebbles and stuff, and then they're like you can't explore it. Some like disturbing the graves of the dead, But then then we found out that the military was transporting military goods on the cruise liner, like weapons and shit. And what happened was probably that the Russians found out about it, so they sank the ship, and we found like holes from the torpedoes and stuff, and like explosions and shit. And the government is trying to cover it up. It's like or 9/11. I had a family who died in Estonia, who drowned.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, you need to read up about it.
Yeah, I'll have to check that. I thought you were talking about that World War I ship that got blown up for almost the exact same thing. It had munitions on it. It was called the Lusitania. And
history does not repeat, but it does rhyme.
Yes. Absolutely. And so when that happened on 9/11, it made me realize, wow, that vision was about 9/11. And I believe the other two waves, by the way, are 2008 crash and then the current Davos shit is the third wave. But anyways, go ahead.
Do you want to start wrapping this up, maybe? I've been talking for... do an introduction, like, or outro, I mean. Do like, where can people find you?
Sure, yeah. Well, they can find me at whitelotusoflight.com, all one word. And that's my main page for my astrology business, spiritual counseling, teaching people angelic magic, channeling, although that's very, like, I need a very specific reason to do that, and I don't like to do that a lot. I also can help to some degree sometimes with past life things, although that's still something that's in development. The primary thing is that I do spiritual counseling, angelic magic, and Vedic astrology off that. I can also do Western astrology, like synastry charts in particular. I can do a Western astrology chart. I've been saying it for 25 years. I just greatly prefer Vedic because it's just way better for determining events that are going to happen in your life. And also there's a million Western astrologers. So, I offer something different by doing that. And I'm very good at what I do. And then you can go to my YouTube channel, which is also White Lotus of Light on YouTube. And I do all kinds of interviews. I'll probably have Simon on at some point. And I've had interviews with like Walter Bosley about the secret space program, Laura Eisenhower, the great granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower, the president. She talks about some of her personal experiences, including with being recruited into the secret space program to go to Mars. I love Laura. She's a friend of mine. She's great. That episode is a little out there even for my show. So enjoy it, take it for what it's worth, and, leave what you don't agree with. I also interviewed Templar Grandmaster Timothy Hogan, that you referenced earlier. Going to have Peter Champu, the geomancer. That episode's going to be up shortly. And so I do all kinds of alternative history. One of the big things I'm doing is I'm doing a whole series on the Venetian Black nobility, who I'm convinced are Malachian and who run the world. A lot of people want to stop at the Khazarian mafia layer, which is an important layer, but I see them as the concierge or administrator or CEO class within this group, but they take orders from the Venetian Black nobility. I'm basically convinced of it. People try and debunk it all the time. I've never heard anyone be able to come up with something that I haven't already considered or haven't already read about. I don't think they're the only game in town. I just think they're the single most important faction on the face of the earth, bar none, and nobody's even close. I mean, these are the people who tell the Rothschilds what to do. So, I do all kinds of shows on alternative history, esoteric topics, all kinds of woo-woo nonsense. Although, actually, I think a lot of it is incredibly amazing, and that, I try and have guests who are credible and learned. I also have a spiritual guest like Paul Tisdale, who's also a Templar brother, who's an amazing Kabbalist, Taoist, just amazing, remarkable man. So check it out. whitelotusoflight.com is my website, and White Lotus of Light on YouTube, and also BitChute, although recently BitChute is making it really hard for me to upload videos, so I don't know what's going on there, but I do have a presence there as well, and I'm going to be expanding from there. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Simon. It's a pleasure. And yeah.
Pleasure was mine.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
I'll catch you next time, mortals. Ciao.
Yeah. See ya.